Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I want to reiterate a couple of things that the leadership said. One, B-Sides, I think it's part of who we all aspire to be, and it represents the best of what it is we as a community want to be. This is volunteer-led. They're running a not-for-profit. If you see the core organizers, the volunteers, give them a high five, give them a hug, thank them. Number two, the rookie track. Go and encourage those guys. I hope they weren't all canceled, just a couple. Okay, just one canceled, excellent. Go and encourage those guys. Finally, go thank the sponsors. Spend some time with them, thank them for sponsoring. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of resources to do something like this. So go visit with them, be an encouragement, and thank them for their time and investment. Viruses, malware, and threats, oh my. Lions and tigers and bears. I have no idea where this title came from. Very briefly, a brief introduction. My name is Trey. I'm the Global Security Strategist for Rapid7. I've held a couple of different roles inside of the industry. Probably much like many of you, I wasn't in any one of them for too long. As a consultant or a solutions architect, I worked with a lot of very smart people. As a product manager, I talked to a lot of smart people. In incident response, I hired a lot of smart people. And in general management, I ran spreadsheets and recruited a lot of smart people. I consider the security community family, and the primary role I have at Rapid7 is one of advocacy. My job is to be a resource for our partners and for our customers. So one of the things I want to drill into very deeply today is the DBIR. You guys downloaded and read the latest version? Oh, come on. If our industry had an NTSB, this would probably be the right document, right? We don't have reams and reams and reams of actuarial data to dig into as a community. Cyber insurance is based on what? Where do they get these numbers from? If we look back into the history of InfoSec, there's kind of this spectrum in place. In the early days, we looked at the theory of self-reproducing automata, this theory that code may echo. We saw Creeper and Reaper following to clean it up. The term virus was coined in '83. A couple years later, the Morris worm was released. Hey, that ran on like Linux or Unix, right? That's safe from viruses. I run OS X, I know I'm fine. Morris is actually interesting. In the United States, what brought Morris into play, what later became as the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, this notion where legislation said, hey, this computer stuff, these hackers, we need to do something about it. We need to create a way to manage that. It was in response to this. Morris was actually the first person thrown in jail under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. In the 90s, we saw DOS and Windows viruses. 2000 was fun because through the 2000s, we saw all kinds of things. I love you, Slammer, My Doom. In that time zone, we went from where we were cleaning up viruses. How many of you guys can just rattle off all the registry key hives you need to go through and clean out when you're manually removing a virus? Like, this was old school, like not old school, I'm young, old school for me. That all changed with Code Red, NIM Sasser. This was where the notion of we can't clean up to get to a trusted computing base. Things changed a little bit. So we went to the nuke and pave timeline. But thankfully, antivirus saved us. This isn't being recorded, is it? Is it? All right, shout out to Dave Marcus. I love to give him a bad time. So we saw an evolution. The Storm botnet, Zeus crimeware. This is where things started going from research and amateur work to professional. SpyEye. APT, it's our favorite acronym. Stuxnet became a reality. So we're talking weaponized, government-backed malware. SpyEye, Bitcoin mining, and Dexter point of sale. One of the things that I think we all would acknowledge, and one of the things that we're still trying to help people understand, this isn't about prevention. This isn't about blocking things out. This isn't just about hygiene. A determined adversary will find their way in. Whether on purpose or accidentally, we will have a footprint given up in our environment. No industry, no vertical, no infrastructure is resilient enough to prevent it. So the question becomes, what do we do about that? So the classic discussion is knowing your opponent. I think we're all somewhat aware of these guys. I have to chew the ice cubes. It's like the rudest thing I could do. We're not going to talk about the DBIR. I think the DBIR is very important data. I think it's something that we should all spend time studying. I think there's a lot of relevant wisdom. I think there's a lot of data that helps tell a story. Executives, the business, these individuals all like to be able to compare themselves. I think the DBIR is the first data point we have where we can actually reference this, where we can actually look across the industry and look at the largest coalesced incident report and kind of share, here's common threads, here's common points of failure, here's things that we know people are blowing it on. So what I would like to do is spend some energy talking a little bit about the good and the bad and how we compare ourselves a little bit and how we're different, our opportunities. So criminal economics, I think we're all aware that money comes with specialization. We're all aware that the bad guys, the criminal hackers, the bad guys, the evil ones, I want to think of them as our opponents. They've specialized very simply. There are groups that write the malware. There's groups that build the exploits. Those that wrangle the bots, those are actually responsible for the attacks. You don't have to be an expert in any one area. Matter of fact, you could be a solid businessman or businesswoman and gather, buy up, recruit, train, work with each of these people. People from around the world with their expertise, their bias, their infrastructure, and run this business, outsourcing every component of it. And we're all aware that most of them are in it to make money. This isn't the hacktivist discussion or doing it for the lulz. This isn't talking about whether or not they're in it for the money. It's a question of what in your environment, what infrastructure do you and your clients, your customers, work to try to protect. The FBI recently announced that the healthcare industry is considerably further behind than a lot of other verticals. And in discussion, one of the things I wanted to underscore with those asking for thoughts on this was that if we take a look at this, and this is not very clean, this FULS information, we're all familiar with how databases work. We spend a lot of time messing with SQL injection, finding ways to interact with interpreters, finding large troves of data that's easily parsed, easily identified. You can write regex to identify and pull off. This is how Target, Neiman Marcus, all those kind of guys ran into problems. What's interesting about this is payment systems are designed to detect fraud. They have a single point of identification. If I and the people in this first, well, not 4 rows, the first 4 rows are empty, but the first 10 rows, if we all shopped at the same place, stopped at the same coffee shop on the way here this morning, and one by one, our cards started being used for fraud, they would have a single point of purchase. They would say, hey, all the cards within this window of time had been compromised. We're all aware of these systems, right? How does this work in healthcare? We guys have all been to a clinic, seen a doctor, and our information may or may not be in a highly structured database. I've seen a lot of paper flying around. In the United States, we signed a HIPAA form. I know that you guys have something similar in the EU. But when people start taking copies of this information home, they don't just have my name, my social security number, my national ID number. They have my medical history, the names of all of my friends and family, addresses I've lived in, because they may need that from a thorough history. I can't change any of that information. They've got everything it takes to apply for credit on my behalf. What's nice for that attacker is that from the moment of data collection to the moment of attack, the moment of actual compromise, when a credit line's open, a credit card's received, a loan is placed, those sorts of things happen, there's a large window from the initial theft to that actual compromise. They have this large window padding and protecting them. We're all familiar with the intrusion kill chain. I believe it was Lockheed that put this together, the cyber kill chain. And I think this is important. I think we're all aware of the different types of defense mechanisms that plug into each of these. I assume you guys almost all have aspects of this. Would you consider yourselves truly expert in any one or two of them? Seriously, give me a hand here. Like some of you guys I know will have a level of expertise in some of these defensive areas. All right. Almost all of the incidents in the new DBIR did talk about deployment of malware. They also talked about compromise of credentials, use of stolen creds, brute forcing, or reuse of those credentials. There's a couple key pieces that we all need to keep track of, but throwing away all the statistics, if we acknowledge at some point they're going to get in, I think we need to have a discussion about how we overemphasize or have historically overemphasized prevention, and we need to drive a balance for response. So I want to talk about the good guys. I believe that we understand our adversaries. I want to talk about how an ounce of prevention is not the same as an ounce of response. I want to talk a little bit about why I believe as a community we have a little bit of a myopic focus. So us, this room, this family, our brothers and sisters, our colleagues around the globe at B-Sides. I'm going to lump in Black Hat because I consider them family. The trainers, some of you that are here present today. We're the professionals. People look to us for guidance, for perspective. And I think we've got a pretty solid understanding of our adversaries. We understand what inside our environment they're after. We're fairly confident how they use the data that we house, the data that we don't own, the data that we're custodians of, how they monetize that, how they value that, what they're going to do with that. I don't think we need to dig into that. I think we appreciate and respect our businesses. I don't have to hash the fundamentals. You guys all know what your business values, how you guys make money, and how our job is to support that. I don't think prevention and response are necessarily the same. I've come to appreciate that I believe response is more important. There's nothing I could do with my team at Black Hat to protect the network. We were going to deal with incidents. Sometimes you take these things on the chin, but I think that detection, containment, eradication, and communicating openly about this stuff is every bit as important in managing your trust that you have with your customers and your business partners. Are you guys familiar with the term shadow IT? Some of you, I'm getting some nods. We all used to talk about going open source. We used to talk about going SaaS. But we don't control that anymore. My wife has a degree in business. She has her master's in divinity. My wife's a lot smarter than I am, far more educated than I am, far more eloquent than I am. She has no technical background, zero. My wife runs IT for a medium-sized business, 300-400 employees global. It's kind of scary. She runs their exchange. She runs Box. She runs all of their enterprise architecture. She does the new hire training. She has got access to everything. Did I mention my wife's not technical? Honey, I want to talk about Okta. What's Okta? Well, it's single sign-on. Well, that's interesting. Why would you want single sign-on, Meg? Well, I would have one place to control people's logins, so I can set them up and it goes everywhere. If I change their password, it goes everywhere. Well, that sounds interesting. Why would you want to do that? I swear I didn't start this. Well, I don't know. I think it's important. It seems like it's going to save me a lot of time. Well, that's great. And when people are having issues, I'll have one place to go. Well, that sounds really smart. And last week when we had to let this guy go, it took me like 45 minutes to clean this stuff up, and we saw that he was still logged into some things. Oh, that sounds bad. Why is that bad? What do you want to do about that? This is interesting to me. My not technical, although extremely bright wife is explaining to me things that you and I know. One of my best friends, Quentin, he always says, if you're explaining, you're losing. I've found that if I try to explain anything to my wife, I've already lost. And when she starts articulating to me core principles of what you and I would consider to be good hygiene. Now, we haven't got to this patch thing for her company, but I'm not really their CSO. I kind of coach and throw things over the wall, like, hey, this Heartbleed thing, get on it. It's kind of amazing because when they own it themselves, the conversation's different. Are you with me? So there's this other thing, user accounts. A human to an account, this is not a one-to-one ratio. How many of you guys use personal accounts for work? 2? You're lying. Stop it. All right. How many of you guys only use your work account for LinkedIn? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, marketing professionals deal with this all the time. Most of this infrastructure, we don't have a one-to-one ratio. We're all accustomed to, spoiled to. I'm an old Novell guy. I can't say old. Old's not real. I believe in Novell. I love Novell. There's this idea. They had the NDS, like their directory architecture, right? Really brilliant. Do you guys remember getting excited in Active Directory when you could drag and drop a user into another OU? That was awesome. And we had that like, I don't know, in 2001, maybe before. NDS, old school management. It's all based on the X.500 standard. I come to appreciate marketing in light of Novell because they had some really brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Remember that argument that broke out between Apple and Windows? We came up with the UI, the GUI. Well, no, that's not true. Hey guys, if you want to fight, just letting you know, I'm over here at Xerox. That actually came from us. I wonder how much different the world would be if they invested in marketing and communications. And this is something I think we're starting to resonate with in security. So the point I was trying to make with the users not being a one-to-one thing, we talk about users, we talk about accounts. The thing is that's not a clean one-to-one ratio. In the enterprise, we have a new hire ticket that's generated. We're all doing this enterprise thing, right? We're all compliant with our SOX or whatever international standards we're using. New hire ticket comes up, we set them up at account and Active Directory, that populates out to Salesforce and Oracle and all the other infrastructure items. They've got all these accounts mapping back to one human. But then there's also these other accounts that are outside of the environment that aren't mapped to central login. And maybe Okta and things like that are kind of cool, but how are we tracking this stuff? How many of you guys wear, whether directly by title or by volunteer fireman type of uniform, an incident response title for your company? Come on, get your hands up, be proud of that. You're my people. Yes. All right, God bless you guys. How many of you guys have dealt, of that group, or how many, the rest of you, how many of you have dealt with accounts that weren't corporate accounts? You're finding out that personal accounts on some level are affecting corporate resources. It does happen. Whoa, that's more hands than IR. All right, this is a serious problem. We've got to be thinking about how to keep track of this. What I'm finding is that, I'm not going to talk about deperimeterization. There's too many syllables in there for it to make any sense. I want to think about this notion that partnering with the user, empowering the user, championing their safety, becoming their trusted counterpart, I don't think that there's any greater cause. And there's something that we're going to have to shift in our attitudes, and I'm going to go there in a second. We as a community, I think, have a myopic focus on the technical. Why do you think that is? It's not something we set out to do. I don't think we all aspire to be Dilbert. Is Dilbert International? Do you guys do Dilbert over here? Okay, I don't ever know. It's easier, it's more constrained. We know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not a very good Unix admin. I came up in Windows, did a lot with Novell. Novell apparently has some Unix roots. But what I found in managing systems is I ask it to do a lot of things. And with the constrained bit, Martin's dead on. When I ask a system to do something, I provide a script, an installer, a GPO. There's a fairly structured amount of behavior that I expect to come back out of that, right? How many of you guys have made the jump from the technical track to the management track? And I'm not saying successfully, but you're in the batting cage swinging at it. A handful, and those are low hands. There's a lot of them, though. All right, I like technology because it is constrained. I do have a measure of expectation. But what's interesting about this is I spent my entire life aspiring to it. I studied my maths. That's how they say it here, right? Maths. I did a lot of science. I took a lot of, I didn't take a lot of programming as much as networking and systems management. But I studied this forever. I banged my head on a hard table forever. I've broken my share of keyboards. I've always been working this. I'm always reading new materials, studying the latest technology, stuff that's coming out. We all do this. We do this nights and weekends. But I think this is an aspirational thing. And because this is something we've spent so much energy pursuing, I think we elevate that. Now, when we make this jump over to management, historically in InfoSec, we've not really respected so greatly our management counterparts. There's a lot of CSOs out there. There's a lot of middle management out there. I think they get a pretty bad rap. Man, my manager is just not very technical. He doesn't understand what we do. Why were you in the office so late? Oh, what was it like golfing, buddy? I mean, like, we're in here trying to fix stuff. It's like they don't understand us. Right now, in this moment, in this chapter of history, I think we're in a really neat place because we're seeing more and more executives, more and more senior management in InfoSec and IT that have moved over, made the jump from technical contributors to management. These people understand us. They've fought our battles, they've bled in the same dirt, they've had pager duty, and they know what that is. I had a manager when I was in IR come back in at 3 in the morning. He personally didn't dispatch his admin. He actually brought us coffee. Showed up, brought us coffee, brought us some warm food, and left. Literally came by, want you guys to know I appreciate you. I know what you're going through. Who's at home sleeping and what time are they up? I'll check on them. That to me is leadership. That was amazing. Middle management, technical management, they get a bad rap. How many of you guys have said the following? That's crap. That's crap. Middle management brought you something. Your boss. No, your boss doesn't always sit on the executive board. It doesn't go from God to the CEO to them down through. No. They're middle management. Something I'm guilty of all too often, and I'm sure that you've faced this as well. They've come to you with something, a directive, a decision that we don't agree with. And of course, being the strong InfoSec type, we let them know. We laid it out. Because clearly they don't get it. We're not in that age anymore. What I think we lose sight of is that these managers, they listen to us, they care for us, they support us. Many of them have walked a mile in our shoes, maybe 5 miles in our shoes. I mean, come on, guys, we're the next generation. Most of us are standing on the shoulders of giants. Some of those giants are, in fact, our managers. And we lose sight of the fact that these managers are bloody on the side that we're not looking at because they went to management, they fought the fight, and they gave every argument we just gave and more. Are we guilty of that? I'm guilty of that. I don't want to be guilty of that, but I am. I have to eat my dog food on this. And so there have been times, I did this in IR. Of course, IR is kind of emotional, and when you're sleep deprived, you're extra stupid. Club Mate doesn't help that. At Black Hat, I did it. But this is interesting, right? Because we lose sight that we've worked so hard to educate our managers and our counterparts that they lose track. They don't know what we're doing. They've fought the battle for us, and it's our job to help educate them on, hey, making sure that you're articulating the arguments correctly, and did you remember all these other points? And sometimes you just have to take it. You pick your battles, and that's their job, not ours. Oh dear, imposter syndrome. Who here has imposter syndrome? Don't raise your hand. I guess we all should. Marty, I love you're sitting in the front. You're the first to raise your hand. You're probably the only man in the room. You're my boy. Imposter syndrome is interesting because I think with our pursuit of technical knowledge, technical mastery, we achieve a certain level of, I clearly don't know enough. Is it not true the more you learn, the more you understand you don't know crap? Is it not true? When you meet with these trainers, this was probably one of my favorite things that I'll never live down at Black Hat. Working with the trainers and the more senior speakers, I've never met a more humble community of people that will meet you wherever you are. I promise you, working at Black Hat, you don't know crap. You're talking to trainers, you're talking to researchers, especially the new kids. They're coming in, man, I got this. What does that even mean? You work at Black Hat? Well, no, you don't understand, dude. Like, you're one of 3 people that get it. Can you use small words and talk slowly and help me understand what's coming out of your mouth right now? Because I do not get it. Imposter syndrome is interesting because I think in product management, I should do a blog post on this. In product management, I learned about the curse of knowledge. You're a security professional, you're a security professional, you're a security professional. When you go talk to your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, your neighbor, the coffee shop girl, whoever, about anything you do for a living, start a stopwatch and see how long it takes for them to glaze over. Unbelievable. Dude, I spent all kinds of time figuring this out. It's awesome. Why don't you care? The curse of knowledge is awesome because once you know something, you just assume people know. It's so clear. I figured it out. Scariest position I've ever been in, coming off stage from doing a big talk at Black Hat, fired up, nailed it. I think I nailed it. And some dude walks up, he's like, hey, so that application you were talking about, did you find this and this, and how'd you get past it? I'm like, oh shit, he was in as deep as I was. Help. So what's interesting about this is, one, when you're doing this research, when you're finding something, not only are you doing something that is rarefied air, you're one of a handful of people that may or may not get it. Number two, when you go on stage to talk about it, you're one of a few people in the room that it's actually going to keep up. Let me illustrate my point. Dan Kaminsky, on stage, opens a terminal window. I did not say popped a shell. Opens terminal, enter, pops terminal. Standing thunderous applause at Black Hat. Can you explain to me what that's all about? How often do you open a command shell at work? Do you hear applause? Your stalker tweeting over the internet, yes! No, there's nothing happening. So the curse of knowledge, just be aware of this. And don't assume, don't be upset when people don't follow, but just be aware of this. This curse of knowledge, it haunts us everywhere. So when I think about the middle manager, when I think about the presentation that we give to IT, when I think about lining somebody out, even inside my security team, that understands me, you guys know what this is? I can promise you when I did a Google search to find permission to reuse this graphic, I cannot find a copy of this, so this is not going to be in the official slide deck. It's coming out. Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston. You want to lose your money, you better bet on Sonny. How often do we walk into a meeting fired up because we've done the homework? People often misunderstand us because we're cocky, we're smart. I think that doesn't necessarily map to the best traditions, the honor that is the community, the shoulders that we stand on, the giants that have held us and coached us and supported us and lifted us up. I think that we're often miscast because we speak from a place of conviction. It's actually humility and passion. We stayed up all night. We read the RFCs. We banged on it till we got there. And I think we're often misunderstood. So what separates the bad guys, the hackers, the criminals, from the good guys? It's not the relentless pursuit of accuracy, relentless pursuit of actually popping a shell, success in an attack, even success in our business objective, which, by the way, isn't necessarily breaking the damn production environment. After Muhammad Ali laid out Sonny Liston, he got to walk away. Only 28 years old, look at me, not a mark on the face. The criminals are in it to cash in. They have a singular objective, a singular focus. That's what makes them successful. Clarity of vision. They know what they're out to do. They're driving a business. They're driving revenue. They're cashing out. Those for the lulz, they've defaced your page. They didn't take anything? That's great. All right, good game. But that's not us. The thing is, when I think of InfoSec, when I think of the community that has been so warm and kind to me to welcome me and my peers and put up with me, and I wanted to tell my first trip as a PCI auditor story to you guys, and I don't know that I've got the guts to do it. That's probably for another time. But when I think of information security, I think of a picture more like this. What is her name? Megan Vogel. Winning the argument, drop in science, that's not success. Megan Vogel is a track athlete. I believe this was in high school. She's running a race. She's not doing so great. The gal that was in the lead dropped. She collapsed. She overcooked it. I think we all come out of the gates a little hot sometimes. I'm just starting to get back to running. I hate running. I still hate it. So Megan's coming towards the last round and rounding towards the finish line, towards that last straight, 100 meters or so out. And this gal's collapsed. Track has rules. It says you don't offer assistance to any other athlete. And that's basically designed to prevent me from boxing someone out because I'm slow and out of shape so my track star athlete can pass. Megan stops and picks this gal up. Totally crushes her opportunity of putting up a solid performance. But this gal, she was leading it. She had a bad go. Picks her up and helps carry her across the line. Being right, proving someone wrong, God help us, embarrassing somebody, that's not who we are. It's not what we want to be. How many of you guys control the P&L and the resources in the IT department? 2 hands? See me afterwards, I'm buying you beer. I got to learn your trick, your secret. I don't know how you do it. For the rest of us in the audience, guys, our success is found in our partnerships and our counterparts. We've got to support these guys. We do a lot of self-policing, and we have to as a community. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and I'm guilty of this. I was poking somebody this week that shall go unnamed, and my attitude was wrong, and the wolves were true and real. But as a community, I think we need to find ways to partner, to pick each other up, to support and encourage, find the right way to call people out. But at the end of the day, I think we're all kind of focusing on the same thing. How many of you guys during the Heartbleed incident got on the phone with a competitor or a peer outside of your company to compare notes? Hold your hands up higher. Stand up. Guys, give these guys a round of applause, please. You know, there's nothing in this industry that encourages us to do this. I'm not going to ask for the number of hands bound by multiple NDAs in this house. How many of you have to clear with legal before you can do a talk, let alone put something in writing, let alone a customer-facing email? It's hard. But in those moments, remember, we're entrusted with this data. This isn't ours. That's not my credit card number. You gave it to us. We did a transaction, but we're custodians. It turns out our competitors down the street, this isn't competitive advantage. This is protecting the greater good, right? I think this is important, and I think these conversations have to happen. So when I think about things, I want to think about how some of what our opponents are doing are better than what we're doing. And I know it's against the rules. You're not supposed to put a bunch of words up on slides, but I don't know how bad jet lag is going to be, so I'm going to cheat. I'm sorry. Playing to your respective strengths, specializing. The bad guys. Turns out the best exploit writers aren't the best botnet herders, aren't the best money mules. They specialize, right? Early on, as a pretty decent systems engineer, it wasn't too bad with Windows management, group policy. I was pretty decent at troubleshooting a network. I don't want to think I'm very good at Excel, but I'll be dogged at Black Hat if I didn't get really good at Excel. That's where I live my life. But I think we need to find ways to specialize, to drive energy into that. We need to capitalize on our natural strengths. The criminal enterprise has something a little different in terms of competitive issues. And having beer with the grug, and I recommend if you ever have a beer, make it one. Those of you that know the grug know that that's the right solution. Hey, Marty. When we partner with organizations, we partner with other professionals. When you hire, you're partnering. When you're interviewing and meeting with security, talk to the IT team and figure out who you're going to be working with. They're your lifeblood. When you partner, you don't have to worry about them potentially being a snitch. What you're doing is on, for the most part, up and up most of the time. When you do something stupid, it's different. We clean that up later. But you don't have to worry about them being a snitch or necessarily trying to cut you out or double-crossing you and stealing your money. Criminal enterprise has a different trust barrier, trust architecture, and liability structure than we do. So finding ways to make it safe for your research team to do research, making it safe for your communications team to communicate. How many of you guys work in marketing? Work in communications? I know you're lying. There's 2 of them over here. Turns out I now work in a marketing crew. My job's to help with that. But it's very strange because how many of you actually trust the marketing team to say, hey, on behalf of the research team, this is the right thing to say. And I'm not going to review it. I trust you. Not a hand. It's truth. It's scary. Finding ways to trust, finding ways to give things away. I think the hardest part about security is finding the right way to trust. I love that from a user standpoint, users are becoming more suspect. Heartbleed was interesting, wasn't it? Has there been, and I'll throw this out for feedback, has there been a single incident in the history of the internet where people, not just techies, not just security folks, people at large, were launching scans against our web servers? Banging on our sites? My mom asked me about this. What is that all about? I got her an iPad so I wouldn't have to deal with like computer questions. Dude, no, I was scanning this and is it safe to log into Cox? I got to pay she doesn't use Cox. But I want to log in and pay my bill. Can I do that? I don't know, Mom. Why don't you call and ask? Who do I call? I don't know. Figure it out. Call them. Kind of cool. Like, this isn't just like, I don't know, the NSA, General Alexander, giving us the opportunity to go talk to our families at the dinner table. This was different, right? It became personal. Finding new ways to expand their gifts. The bad guys have it a little easier than we do. Our opponents have it a little easier than we do. I'm trying to get to this gender-neutral messaging, and I'm doing a horrible job. I like my fighting and war metaphors. I got to get away from them. Bad guys, that's one too. Sorry. They have it easier because they get to specialize in very lucrative ways, don't they? How many different hats do you have to wear on a daily basis? Those of you in IR are wearing at least a dozen. But how many of you guys have one clear job function? Let me get this straight. Your job is to fire up a VM, log into Tor, check into 3 encrypted email accounts, move some funds around, and then get off the internet and get back across town? No, it's the grug. The rest of us are checking the pager, checking the cell phone, checking the Twitter, checking the Facebook, checking the LinkedIn, checking the corporate email, checking the Jira, checking the Confluence, checking. It never stops. What's interesting about this is how many of you have spent time outside of our technical pursuits exploring how to better communicate to our business counterparts? Have taken managerial classes, maybe worked on an MBA. For those of you that don't believe in that stuff, jumped in and did like advanced Excel classes, worked in public speaking, even did something silly. I started taking improv, and let me tell you, if you want to get past your notion of I'm uncomfortable on stage, they make you do everything stupid in the book. It's unbelievable. Make up a sci-fi creature and act it out for the next 10 minutes. Horrible. But it helps you communicate a little differently. What's very strange about this is, in improv, I come to appreciate that it doesn't have to do with the science I drop, how eloquently I hit my messaging, how very clearly I articulated a solution, an architecture, a problem, or a business case. Remember that thought, if you're explaining, you're losing? Communication is what the listener does. Communication is what the listener walks away with. Has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with how you did or what you covered. The meeting is literally about getting them to walk away with ownership of a problem. I want to move to centralized authentication. I want to move to Okta. It's mind-numbing. I don't know how it happened. I wish I could figure that out. My wife is so smart. So sometimes when I start looking at the problems we're facing in InfoSec, I think of Dave Marcus, and I channel my spirit animal, Dave Marcus, and I realize some of the kids coming out of college right now have been watching us. Turns out Twitter removed that veil of brilliance where we sounded so smart on the mailing list. We spent a lot of time sorting things out our own networks and talking to peers in IRC. These kids are coming out with far more expertise. Running incident response for Zynga, I assure you, I've worked only a handful of IR incidents, but hiring these kids out of like CCDC. Does Europe have like a CCDC kind of thing? CCDC, Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. It's basically like a red team exercise for colleges. All right, dude, you guys got to get in on this. All right, so what they've got is a bunch of universities that get together, and they've got, it's like a CTF environment. They're running a full tilt capture the flag, just like DEF CON or anywhere else you'd attend, except it's organized college teams. Do these kids know how to lock down a BSD box? They've learned web AppSec. They've learned exploit development. I mean, like, these guys know everything that we spent forever trying to figure out, or for me sitting back and watching. What's interesting is they have all these skills, but they can't communicate it. They can't message it. They can't put together a P&L, the profit and loss sheet. They can't communicate it to the business. They're excited, they want to take over the world, and they want to do it all right now. One guy literally tore apart our entire Puppet infrastructure, owned the Puppet platform, and was literally rebuilding aspects of the Git repos in production without talking to anybody on his lunch break. I cannot articulate what that meeting went like. When my boss called me in to say, dude, what's going on with Puppet and Git? People can't get in. They don't know where stuff went. It's like the chipmunks. Alex! Amazing, the things these guys teach you. So I've got to be sensitive to time. I want to wrap this up so you guys aren't late getting started. How do we live this? Something that Rapid7's CEO, and I don't always love how things are positioned, but I love the sentiment behind it. Corey, in my interview process, and I spent 7 weeks reflecting on, do I want to go to Rapid7 to work there? They've had a bum rap. They've had some rough sales history in the past launching, and this company has made some hard decisions and made some big investments. Something Corey he's put this into the minds of all the employees, all the teams, and something that he does himself every week. He stops and reflects on the question, what am I doing? What have I done this week? Right now, what is on my calendar for this week that makes me more relevant? What am I doing right now? And I'm not talking existentially through to my job duties in the umbrella organization I'm a part of. What am I doing myself right now that makes me more relevant? How am I changing the information security space? What am I doing to leave this better than I found it? And this is something that I think we have to live, and we have to instill this in our teams and our peers, and we need to demand this of ourselves, and we need to hold ourselves accountable to this idea. We need to find and create heroes. These are people that are going to stand for what we believe is going to be the best in information security. These are the things that we aspire to, personally and professionally. And this is something that I really got into, something I really think makes a lot of sense. One of the things deals with helping others seek to do the right thing. Doing a good job is marginally more expensive than doing the job and exponentially more effective. I have no idea where that quote came from. These aren't like statistics where you can make them up on the spot. Somebody said this, and I feel bad I couldn't find the source. Some of my favorite quotes usually come out of chats with Mercurial. If you guys know, or if you've got a phone, look him up on Twitter and follow him. He's awesome. Earlier when I talked about reaching out to people outside of your organization for feedback, I get in trouble for this. I love to reach out to people I know that are experts, in my opinion, smarter than me in areas that I can learn from, that will challenge me, that will stretch my perspective, or will call me out, Trey, that's crap. I understand you're upset, but that comes out of your mouth, you're gonna fail. That's not gonna be effective. You're not gonna win people over. They have to own it, help them get there. We've all talked about this. Wasn't there like some sort of report that says it costs like 10 or 100 times more expensive to fix a bug after it's released to production than it was in QA? It was one of those source code production reports. I don't know that we've solved any of those problems. We're making progress, but I think the sentiment carries that if we're going to do something, this probably flies in the face of agile methodology, and that's a whole different philosophy. We're not going to get into that today. But doing something right is worth the additional investment. Rich came all the way from San Francisco today. Rich is, I call him the director of awesome. He was my senior marketing guy at Black Hat. I used to preach something called Virtuosity. Anybody know what Virtuosity is? I don't. Shut up. Might be. All right, so Virtuosity. This is the notion of doing the common uncommonly well. I don't know why it's always like the little Asian kid on the piano or the violin that I always think of, the little childhood virtuoso. They pick up an instrument, they sit down, and they play something simple, and they play it elegantly. Doing the common uncommonly well. I didn't help organize Black Hat. I was only there for 2 years. I had the honor and the privilege to work with the team to try to help serve a community in this role. And there's no one on earth that wants to put on a t-shirt with a bullseye in the front and back and say, I can run this. That's why I hid in the back. I didn't want my name out there. Virtuosity. What I thought our keys for success, what our table stakes were to stay in the game, was to focus on core components where every time we touched an attendee, I wanted it to be the best experience we can make it. I wanted to try to find and distill and execute on what we felt the core principles were. And I think this applies to every aspect of life. I don't know who originally came up with this. I'm pretty sure every coach I ever played football, your football, not America's football, every coach I ever played for always preached the same thing. We're going to focus on the foundation, that little shuffle step where you kick the ball back and forth. You do all the little dance moves with the soccer ball, football. Doing the common uncommonly well. And I think this applies to everything else. When we tear apart the DBIR and we look at the failure report card, I don't think this is because we're focused on fail. Don't let anybody feed you that. When we focus on the report card, what we're studying is lessons that we can learn from other people's beats, right? We're falling down to the fundamentals. Who here has patching nailed? And I mean nailed. And I mean nailed. Yeah, what's up? Let's not go there. So I'm not going to hammer this any further. If it's worth doing right, and maybe it's worth doing right the first time. That's the Department of Redundancy department. O-Day is always fun, and I like to argue O-Day. We get into this discussion a lot around major conferences. I think Aloria, if you guys are following, what's the little GIF Twitter stream? Yes, security reactions, that's awesome. Follow it. Not always safe for work, but you guys are a little more lax in Europe. Security reactions is awesome because I always make fun of like the one person that's dropping O-Day at a conference, and there's like the cat freaking out and all the puppies crawling all over the cat. Dropping O-Day is important and interesting. How many of us, in all seriousness, literally fire off red alerts to our teams and launch into action every time an O-Day is discovered? All right, some of us are full of it. You see, we're all aware, and I think we all believe this on some level, but we have to articulate this clearly. At any point in time, there's always O-Day floating around out there. We can't be responding to this. O-Day is simply a sanity check. We have to be prepared and be defending against this sort of stuff. We need to be prepared to instrument when we find things. The most interesting conversation about Heartbleed was, how do I really know? Like, can I figure out, not just am I being hit, but who maybe is more interesting? Well, it doesn't have really artifacts of attack. It didn't have intrusion indications. We're going to land in one of these departments. Jen Savage probably had one of the most succinct thoughts, and this came through probably around midnight last night when I was rebuilding my PowerPoint deck. Manual tasks you don't do regularly aren't emergencies. I think the salient point that she's making here is that I don't know if we always do the most effective job of automating the things that need to be done frequently. How many of you guys are tracking? I'm not talking logging, actually doing something with the data that comes from successful login attempts. We have 2 people here that know about PCI, 2 of them. Successful login attempts are terribly interesting. For those of you with production environments, having a jump box is great because any lateral logins that didn't come from that box, lights on, let's go, right? These are interesting thoughts, how we leverage data that's available. Yet another quote from Mercurial, and I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick. Resilience in the face of failure is better than planning for zero failure. Resilience in the face of failure is better than planning for zero failure. How many of you guys have ever dealt with a water or power outage? Mass hysteria in the streets, dogs and cats sleeping together. It's like the worst parts of the Bible, right? No, dude, you fired up your, you guys call them torches here, right? Your flashlight, and you're fine. IT departments are not motivated in that way. How many of you to this day have IT departments that are motivated? They get their bonuses, their additional income based upon uptime percentages. Raise your hand, Martin. Almost everybody, right? It's all about uptime, it's all about availability. This is hard because resilience doesn't always dictate, safety doesn't always dictate being online and being available. You got a couple giggles there, come on. Bro, do you even Chaos Monkey? You guys know what Chaos Monkey is, right? This is Bill Burns, 501c3 on Twitter. Chaos Monkey is literally a script designed in production to turn off servers, to kill processes, to break things in production. Why is that a good idea? How many of you are in pen testing? Red teaming, attacking? Keep your hands up, y'all. Yeah, I said y'all. I'm wearing cowboy boots. Get off my lawn. How many of you do not have scopes of work? Keep your hands up. When you do an engagement, you don't have anything that's out of bounds. Come get some. I got a couple of shaky hands, a couple of shrugs, and a couple of real big smiles. Attackers don't have scopes of work. They don't. And I had a discussion with the CSO, and I'm praying and hoping, and I'm pushing and cavorting. I'm going to find a way to blackmail him into doing this. There's a CSO, a prominent organization on the internet that we all know and love and use, that is advocating the elimination of this notion of scopes on his red team entirely. We all do tape backups. We do online backups. If we're using VMware, virtual hardware, cloud infrastructure, Backups are totally different. How come we can't test this stuff? Somebody gets inside, what do? I think we would all agree with this. This is an interesting problem. I'm hoping I can talk this guy into doing this. I keep wanting to say his name just to force him, and I can't bring myself to do it. This next bullet is brought to you by America's TSA. I hope they're not a Rapid7 customer. 100% defense is not possible. So parting shots. I request. I think it was Kevin Mandy at RSA that said the Air Force taught him that you can only give 3 bullets. So I'm going to blow that. I'm just going to give you a whole bunch more. Respect criminal hackers as business professionals. We need to honor that our opponents are focused, they're diverse, they're specialized, and they're efficient at what they do. We need to achieve virtuosity on the fundamentals. This isn't something we do on our own. This is something we rely on our partnerships and those we're supporting and we're investing. We carry those that have fallen, and those are our partners, and we're there for their success. Champion response and prevention. Part of this means discussing ODA better, not using it as a fire drill item, but as a sanity check and discussing, well, this has been out there. Heartbleed was out there for 2 years. This is interesting. What's our solution set for this? Automate where you can. Winning isn't enough. Don't give up on being right. And challenge each other to expand your skill set. Things that aren't just technically oriented. I'm not saying everybody needs to go middle management. I'm not saying everybody has to jump from being a technical contributor to being a people manager, but we need to help those guys. That's a hard transition. It's hard to do. It's hard to be successful, and it's hard to be happy doing, but help expand your gift sets. Long rant. I think I'm right on the money. We've got 10 minutes left. Any questions? Or rotten tomatoes or eggs? Guys, it's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me.